Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I want to show you how to use Expo notifications with EAS, Expo Application Services. We're going to learn how to configure our credentials, especially with the new version of Firebase Cloud Messaging for Android. There's a lot of confusion right now on how to integrate push notifications. So in this video, we're going to learn how to set them up, and we're going to learn as well how to set our credentials using Firebase for Android. And then we're going to learn how to test this on real devices. We're going to be triggering some push notifications using the Expo tool. So let's see the demo. Alrighty guys, so here as you can see, I have my iPhone and I'm streaming the screen. So as you can see there, and I also have a real device. By the way, this is very important. You need a real device to test this, otherwise you won't be able to see if your push notifications are working. We have two development builds that we created using Expo EAS. And let's see how this works. So for example, on the left, I already have here the push notification of Expo. And you can just go to this website, which is Expo Dev /notifications. And this is a tool that Expo provides to quickly test sending push notifications. So here I have the push token. By the way, you shouldn't share the Expo token, but since I'm going to delete this app, it's okay if you see it. So this is my Expo token for my Android device. And if I scroll down, you can see that the message title for this notification is Code with Beto. And then we can add a body. So for example, hello world. And then we can send some data as well. And some specific platform specific settings, like for example, iOS, you can have a subtitle. So I can say message subtitle. And then we can also have a batch count. So let's say that I want to have 10, since I already have one, as you can see there on the right. Then we can play a sound, and for Android, we can select the channel ID. I'll just use the default. And then, very important, like as I was mentioning before, like last month or this month, Firebase Cloud Messaging Legacy is not working anymore. So now we have Firebase Cloud Messaging version 1. And by the way, by default, the default behavior will not force sending the push notification via the legacy. By the way, it's going to send it via the legacy API. But if the legacy credential exists, right, only. Otherwise, it's going to be using the version 1. In this case, we're going to be using version 1, of course. So let's go ahead and send a push notification. And I should be able to get it here in my Android device, as you can see there. And if I swipe down, you can see that it says Code with Beto, and Hello World is the subtitle. No, it's the body. Okay, now let's see the same thing with iOS. So for iOS, what I'll do is just open the app and just shake my device, reload, and I'll just go to the terminal, copy this push token, and then just come here, replace it. And just to show you that this is working, I'll just create a message title. Let's say iOS, message body, hello. We can add a subtitle for iOS, as you can see there. And batch count is going to be 10. So let me bring it back. I have to close the app so that we can see the notification. Okay, so let's send a notification. There we have it. So this is how it looks on iOS. Let's open, and the batch is working, as you can see here. We have 10. All right, so that's the demo, guys. Let's now jump and see how we can do this. So the first thing that I want to do is just maximize here my browser, and I'll go to Firebase because we need to create a new Firebase project for this. All right, so here I am in my console in Firebase. I'm guessing you already have an account, so just go ahead and sign in, and let's create a new project. I'll name this one notifications tutorial, for example, and then continue. Now I'll turn off, of course, we don't need them. Let's create a project. This is gonna take a moment, so let's wait. All right, our Firebase project is ready. Let's hit continue. And now we are inside this project, okay? Now this step is only for Android. So what I want to do here is just go to the settings here on the left, project settings. From here, let's select service accounts. Okay, let me close this on the left. Let's scroll down here and generate a new private key. Okay, so be careful with this key because if you lose it, you can't recover it. So let's go ahead and click generate. Now let's check the downloads. All right, so in my downloads, guys, as you can see here, I have now this JSON file that contains credentials for my project. Since I'm going to be using Expo Application Services or EAS to build my application, I need to make this available on EAS. So let's go ahead and, by the way, I'm using this guide to guide myself on how to do this. And you can check it as well if you want to follow along with me in the push notifications documentation of Expo. You can find the Add Android Firebase Cloud Messaging version 1 credentials. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do once we have this credential is actually upload this to EAS as I was mentioning before. But before I do that, we need to create a new app, right? So let's create a new app for this example. Okay, so I'll create a notifications tutorial application just to show you how we can do this. All right, and the project is ready. So I'll just go ahead and cd into the notifications tutorial. And then I'll open this in VS Code. The next thing that I'll do is just make sure that I'm using my EAS credentials, the correct ones for this project. So I'll just say EAS, who am I? And by the way, if you don't have the CLI, EAS, it's a CLI, you can install it by saying npm install global EAS CLI. Okay, so to make sure that you have EAS CLIs, so now I can say who am I and hit enter to make sure that I'm using the account that I want to use for this case. In this case, I want to use Beto at Expo. This is my account. So now I want to initialize a new EAS project. So let's say EAS init and hit enter. I'll select my account, Beto at Expo. And then would you like to create a project for this specific new app that we just created? So I'll go ahead and say yes. And this is going to create my project. And here, if you can see in the app.json, if I scroll down, this is going to add this extra information, which is going to contain my project ID from EAS and the owner as well. Okay, so now with this ID, we can start configuring our builds. So now let's say EAS build configure, I believe this is the command that I want, and I'll configure all platforms and hit enter. What this is doing is just creating an EAS.json file. In this file, we can configure specific flows and profiles when we are building applications using EAS. So by default, we have development, preview, and production. And this is how it looks. It's a very simple file. Okay, so now once we have this, I'll go ahead and run EAS credentials, as you can see here on the left, right? So let's go ahead and hit enter. Now select the platform, in this case, Android. The profile in this case would be production, and specify Android package. Okay, so it needs, by the way, and let me quit this, I forgot. We need to specify a package. So if we go to the app.json, we have iOS and Android. And for iOS, we can go ahead and add a bundle identifier like this. And for Android, we need to specify the package. So in this case, I will leave the same one. Okay, so I think I made a mistake. It's telling me that I'm using invalid name for Android. Yeah, so it seems that we cannot use this dash. So let's go ahead and remove it in both platforms. Let's quit this and try again. I'll select Android, production. All right, now we need to select Google Service Account, and then Google Service Account key for push notification. Let's go ahead and select that. Let me make this a bit bigger so that we can see a bit better. And let's click on set up Google Service Account for push notification, and then upload a new service account key for this app. And now we need to specify the path. Okay, now if you remember, we have that in the downloads. This is the file that we need to upload. Now, of course, you want to be careful with this file. For now, what I'll do is just put it in my root folder, and I'll just close it. Close this as well. And you can go ahead and add these to your gitignore if you want. But to upload it to EAS, we can simply specify the path by copying the name of this file. So for example, I'll just copy the name, then come back here and say, paste the name.json. This is going to grab it from my root folder and it's going to upload it. So let's go ahead and hit enter. Okay, there we go. Okay, and those are the credentials that EAS is going to need once we build our application. Now we can just go ahead and Ctrl+Z and let's go back to Firebase. We generated our key. Now we need to go back to the general section of the application and we need to connect the Android application. So in the apps, let's select Android. Now we need to specify the package. If you remember, we created this package. So let's go ahead and copy. Let me close this. I'll copy this package, Command C, Command B, the name of my app, notifications example, and we need to specify the sign-in certificate required. So to get this certificate, it's actually, I think, very easy if we just go to the Expo dashboard. So let's go to expo.dev and here I am in my Expo dashboard. I'm going to select my notifications tutorial project, which is the first one that we have here. And as you can see, I don't have anything. We have builds and we can select all builds and I don't have anything yet. And on the left, as you can see, we can scroll down to the configuration and then select credentials. Now in this case, we don't have anything yet. We only have these, I think, Android. Now we don't have any credentials for this application because we haven't created any build for Android. So I think the way we can fix this is by just triggering a new build for Android by saying EAS Build and then say platform Android and hit enter. So what this is doing, it's going to ask me to generate a new Android key store. So let's go ahead and select yes. In this case, this is a new application, of course. And if you already have an application that already contains a key store, you can use that one, okay? Now in this case, we generated this new key store. So if I come back here and reload on the credentials tab, you can see that now I have this Android key store. And by the way, I can go to my builds, all builds, and I can see the one that I just triggered using the CLI. So let's go ahead and cancel this one. I can just click on these three dots and then cancel build. And yeah, we're good. I think this should stop now. Okay, it was canceled. Okay, now let's go back to the credentials. Let's select Android and let's copy our key store. So in this case, we need the SHA-256. So I'll just click on copy here and let's go back to Firebase. Now let's paste that in here. SHA-1. I think I copied the wrong thing. Yeah, I need a fingerprint. Okay, let's go back. I copied the wrong one. Let's paste it here. This is the correct one. Yeah, so before I do that, I need to provide my package again. So let's go to the code. And let's copy the package name for Android. Let's put in here. And now we can register this application. All right, now we can download this Google Service.json. And this is going to be a new file that we need to drag and drop to our application. So let's go to the downloads. Now I have this Google Services.json. And let me go back to the code. Let me open the Explorer. I cancel the build, as you can see here. I'll clear the terminal so that we don't get confused. And let's go ahead and drag and drop this Google Services file. Okay. Now, I uploaded this file that contains my keys and all that to EAS. So that means that I don't need this anymore in here. So I'll just go ahead and delete it. Of course, I know that I have a copy in my downloads, so be careful on that. Now, the google-services.json, it's a file that most of the time you won't want this to be on GitHub, and you have to be careful as well because this contains credentials. So what I want to do here is add this to my git-ignore. Okay, so let's go to the git-ignore, and down here we can say I don't want to track the Google Services JSON. And by the way, now that I'm here, I'll just add the iOS and Android folder in case I want to build these two folders in the future. But I'm gonna be using EAS, so I don't think I'll be doing that. But yeah, you can add them if you want to. So the Google services, now this is a tricky one because we don't want to push Google services to GitHub, but we do want to push Google services to EAS, right? So EAS is going to ignore all the files that we have in the git-ignore when we trigger a build, which means if we add the Google services JSON, we won't have access to this file to set up our credentials for push notifications once we trigger the build. So the way we can fix that is by creating a new file, and I'll call this one EAS ignore. EAS ignore, it's a file that we can use to ignore files, but in this case for EAS. Now this is great because we are overriding now the git-ignore functionality. Of course, most of the time you would want to just copy and come to the EAS ignore file and paste everything. So I'm just copying everything from git-ignore, but in this case, I want to include the Google Services JSON, so we can go ahead and delete this. This means that I'm going to push everything, including the Google Services, once I trigger the build. So once we trigger the build, we're pushing the code, including the uploading the code to EAS servers, including the Google services, which means theoretically this should work when we create the build. Okay, so that's one way to do it, or the other one could be just uploading the Google services to EAS. We can do that as well by uploading credentials, and you can learn more in their documentation in the Expo docs. So let's go ahead and close this EAS ignore for now. Let's close these Google services. Now, the next thing that I'll do is just click on next here on my Firebase. And then we need to add the Firebase SDK. Now let's keep scrolling down. I think from here, what I'll do is just click next and then continue to console. So we did that. And then we went to configure the Google services file. That's done. We downloaded it. We added to the project. Now it is in the root folder, right? So we need to add the same thing. We need to specify the Google services file into the app.json. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll go to the app.json. Inside Android, I'll create a new item and then add a comma here, hit save. Now the path to my Google services is going to be in my root folder. So I can simply say /google-services.json. Make sure that it's the same name that you have in here. And once we have this, we should be good. So I'll just go ahead and press save. And then let's scroll down. And now we're all set. We should be able to send push notifications, and we are good to start integrating this. So let's go to the notifications here. I think I can just go to the overview in the docs, and then we can go to this setup. We need to install some dependencies. So let me make this a bit bigger just to make sure that we are able to see what's going on here. So in the install libraries, we're going to need Expo push notifications. Expo notifications, then Expo device. Expo device is just to make sure that we are using this on a real device. And this library is going to help us do that because this is not going to work on simulators or emulators, right? Then we also have Expo constants. This one is used to get the project ID value from the app config. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy this. Let's go to the project and install these dependencies using npx expo install. Okay, cool. Now the next thing, here we have a minimal example, by the way. But the next thing that I want to do, the approach that I want to use for this video is to create a provider that is going to allow the application to pass down the push token. Okay, so let's do that. And I'll go ahead and create a new folder on my root, and I'll call this one context. I'll create a new folder once we are here, and I'll call this one utilities or utils. And inside this one, I'll create a new file. And this file is for register for push notifications async.ts. So I'm just abstracting, or I want to abstract the logic of registering the device for push notifications, and I'll just go ahead and paste some code in here. And let's walk through this code to make sure that everyone understands what's going on in here. This is going to be a function called register for push notifications, and we are importing all as notifications from Expo notifications. We are using here the Expo device and Expo constants, and as well the platform. Now, something very important to keep in mind is that for Android, before we can actually start sending notifications, or before we can even ask if we can send them notifications, we need to set a channel. That's why we have here in the first line, if the platform is Android, we are using the method that comes with the notifications from Expo, set notification channel async. And this is going to assign a channel configuration. The channel name is default, and you can change this if you want to, and you can create more channels, but we need at least one. So we're going to be using the default one. And this is going to be created if it needs to be created. Okay, so we're defining the default channel, and then we're defining the importance. This is another important thing, because if you set the priority to low, in some cases it could be that the devices or Android devices won't get the notification. So make sure that you set this to max. And if I say dot, you can see that we have high, low, max, min, or none. So in this case, we're going to be using max. By version pattern, I would say you can customize this. I don't really know what this is doing. And then we can also specify a light color. I'll just leave those defaults. And then next validation that we want to do is check if we are in a real device. So that's why we're using device. And if we are in a real device, we are going to grab the status of the permissions of the notifications. In this case, we're using the get permissions async, and then we're storing the final status in this variable. Okay, so then with the existing status, we're checking if it's not granted, then we are going to request permissions. Okay, so if the status is granted, after this, we're going to get the status, and then we're going to assign it to the variable that we define here. If the status is not granted, we're just going to throw an error, because at this point we want to, the purpose of this application is to show the notifications, and if the user does not allow, so we cannot do anything. But in your case, maybe you want to show an alert, or maybe you want to do something else. Now, the next thing is grab the project ID for this project, okay? And this is for EAS. We're using EAS, so we're grabbing this using the constants. We're grabbing the project ID, and once we have the project ID, we can get the Expo push token. Now, the project ID is so that we're using the project ID so that Expo can know more data about our application, how many notifications we are sending, and then based on this data, they can show us some graphs and some UI that we can check on the Expo Dev dashboard about the delivery of the notifications and things like that. So we are getting the push token. Once we have the push token, we are putting it in the console, because now we are debugging and we want to copy the token and go to the Expo notifications tool to trigger some notifications. Okay, so this is just returning the push token, and that's it. Then we also have some trash and else case. We're throwing some errors in the case that we are in a simulator and things like that. Okay, so this is the util function. By the way, the code for this is going to be available on my GitHub, or you can check it out at codewithbeto.dev, my platform. But yeah, if you want to copy the code. Now, the context, this is totally optional. I think it's just an idea that I had, creating a notifications context.tsx. Okay. And this notifications context is just so that we can access the token anywhere in the application. So I'm planning on wrapping the layout or the entry point of the application with this context. And here we are just defining the type of the context. Then we are importing the register for push notifications utility function that we just created. We are importing subscription from Expo modules core. And down here, I'm creating this hook, use notification context, which basically is just using the notification context that we are creating here. Otherwise, we are throwing an error. Otherwise, we return the context. Okay. Then we're defining some properties for the notification provider. This is the provider. This is how it looks. Basically, it's a component that is going to take a children as property. And then we are setting some state that we want to share throughout the application. So the Expo push token is the one that I'm most interested in. And then I also want to share the notification data. So when we get a notification from Expo, we get some payload like the title, description, but sometimes it's very important to access the data that we are receiving in the notification. So I'm just adding the notification, and once we get a notification, everything inside the context is going to have access to this notification. Cool. And now in this context, I'm setting as well the listeners for receiving and the responses of the notification. Okay. And to set these listeners, as you can see here, I'm starting this using these two references. Everything is typed. That's why we are using this subscription that we imported at the top. Let's see, from Expo modules core. Cool. So inside this use effect, we are calling the register for push notification async. And then once we get the token, this is our utility function, by the way. Once we get the token, we set the token into the state variable here. This can be a string or this can be null. We set it. If we get an error, we set the error, and that's it. Now, we set in this use effect the listeners for so that we start listening when a notification comes, right? So this is very important as well, guys. We have two listeners here. The first one is going to be add notification received listener. So this listener registered by this method will be called whenever a notification is received while the app is running. Okay. So if my app is open or if my app is foregrounded, this, I think, I mean, this is only if the app is open, I think. I'm not sure if the app is foregrounded, we will get this notification. But if the app is open, we will get the notification data and everything. Sometimes you can set the notification to show even if your application is open, but most cases, you don't want to show the notification if the app is open, right? But you can do something with the data. So this is where you would have your custom logic. In this case, I'm setting the notification variable that we defined up here, and this notification is going to be passed to the children of this context. Okay, and I'm putting in the console, we got a notification. And then maybe just so that we have a better understanding, we can say received while the app is running, right? So let's copy this and let's just change this in here. Let me just fix this. Notification received while the app is running. So let's go ahead and hit save. Now, the other important method, and it's very important so that we understand the difference of these two listeners, because the other one is called add notification response received listener. Response, right? Response in this case. So this listener registered by this method will be called whenever a user interacts with a notification. So this is very different because sometimes users get notifications and sometimes they just dismiss them or close them. But if the user presses the notification or the user does something with the notification, you can trigger some logic based on the response. And the response is going to contain very similar results as the notification. In this case, the response is going to be of type notification response, which contains a notification inside of it. And this is of type notification, as you can see here. This is a notification. But if you check the response type, this is going to be notification response. It's just like a notification with an extra field. That's why the type changes, but it's going to be very similar. But as you can see here in this example, the response comes, you have to say response dot notification to access a notification. Whereas in the previous method, you can simply access the notification directly because this is what you get in here. Okay, in this case, you can say response dot notification and then the same data. Now, if I say dot, you can see that we get extra fields like user text and action identifier. That's the only difference. Okay. Cool. So yeah, so you can handle the response in here. You can do something with this. When we're going to see some examples in this case. But let's just go ahead and follow the same pattern in this case. So we can say user interacts with notification. Let's copy this and just paste it here, just so that we know what is going on, right? Finally, these are the subscription cleaners. We need to check if we have a current subscription, then we want to remove it when we unmount this component or when we unmount this context. Finally, we are just passing the provider with the value that we want to share to the children, which is the Expo push token, the notification, and the error if we have one. Cool. So that was a lot of information, but once we have this context, we can go ahead and use it in the application. So let's go to the layouts, which is the entry point of the app, and I'll just go ahead and wrap this into my provider. So I'll just say notification provider from the context, and let's just wrap this in here, hit save. And now, just like that, everything should be able to have access to the push token. Cool. Now, before we continue, we need to set some settings for the notifications, right? So let's do that in here. I'm going to need to import all as notifications from notifications, Expo notifications, and let's hit save. Now, this is another very important thing. Here's where we define if we should show the alert even if the app is open. And this is the should show the alert. As you can see here, it's equal to true, which means I should be able to see the notification even if I'm inside the application. So you can set this to true or false, whatever. But yeah, you have to set this notification handler in here. So this is the first thing that we need to do. Now let's go to the index screen, which is inside the tabs. This is like the home screen. And I'll just go ahead and remove everything that we have in here. I'll just go ahead and just create a simple tag. And I want to use my hook. So let's say use notification. This is my hook. And remember that this is passing the state that contains Expo push token, notification, and the error. Okay. And from here, of course, you can extend, but we can say if we have an error, maybe just return, don't do anything. You can say return an empty tag, for example. So what I'll do is I'll just create a simple UI by replacing this. I'm actually using the theme component, theme view, and theme text that comes with the template. So we are just validating if we have an error, then we are putting the notification in the console once we get it. But by the way, I think we are already doing this in the context. So if I go to the context, let me just double check when we get the notification listener. But yeah, by the way, because we're passing the state, we're grabbing the state here, right? So if we get a notification, we can use it to display it anywhere in any component has access to this, right? Just by using this hook. So yeah, this is what we're doing here. So let's go ahead and hit save, and I'll just delete this that I was playing around with. I'm setting here the response.content data, which is the important part of the notifications, I would say. And let's just hit save. And now we need to build our application so that we can test it. I'm going to be using EAS because we already have our credentials for iOS and Android over there. So let's go ahead and open the terminal, and I'll just say EAS Build. And then we can specify the profile. The profile is going to be development. So let's go ahead and hit enter. This is going to ask me which platforms do you want to build this app for. So I'll just say all. And you want to build a development build client for this application. And because I want to install this on my physical device, the CLI is very smart and is telling me that we need to install the Expo dev client. So let's go ahead and install that dependency by saying yes. And this is going to install it. And then it's going to trigger the build. So as you can see here, a bunch of things are happening at the same time. We're using the remote Android credentials that we uploaded before. And then we're using the key store from the configuration. Okay, so this is the credentials. And then we are uploading the code that we have in this project to EAS. And like I said before, because I have a EAS ignore file, successfully sending this google-services.json, right? Now the same thing for iOS. We're using the remote iOS credentials, and it's asking me if I want to log into my Apple credentials. Now this is going to handle everything from Apple in this case. So let's go ahead and sign in to my Apple developer account. This is my Apple ID. And then I already had my password in here. So it's asking me which team do I want to use. In this case, I want to use Code with Beto, my organization. And it's logging in with my credentials, and it's asking me if I want to use the same distribute certificate. Of course, I want to use the same one. I don't want to be creating a bunch of certificates, but if you don't have a certificate, just go ahead and create one. So let's go ahead and hit enter, and it's asking me about my devices. I have two test devices, in this case my iPhone 15 Pro, and then I also have an iPhone 12. So these two are selected. I'll just hit enter. And this is creating my new profile for this application. Would you like to set up push notifications for your project? Of course, we want to do that. So let's go ahead and hit yes. And then let's use the same key that I have. But of course, if you don't have a key, you can create a new one. So I'll just go ahead and say yes in this case. And if you already have one, I would say just use the same one. Now this is waiting for the builds to complete, and you can press Ctrl+C to exit. So yeah, we can just leave the terminal open to see the progress of these two builds. But yeah, let's wait a moment. Okay, so one thing that I'll do while this is loading, I'll just put this to the left, and I'll bring my iOS device. And just to show you guys that I'm going to delete the app that I had before. Okay. And I want to do the same on Android. So let's go ahead and say app info. And this is what I like about Android, is that you can control the real device throughout this, as you can see here, I don't know if you can see there, but you can basically delete the application and control my real device from Android Studio, which is huge. So I'll just go ahead and uninstall, click OK, just so that we start together once we have these builds. Alrighty guys, so the builds are ready. And if I make these bigger, as you can see here, by the way, I'll make this a bit smaller just so that we can see what's going on here. I'll move them to the right, but this is the link for Android and this is the link for iOS. So what I can do here is maybe just put this to the left and then bring my iOS device. And what I'll do is just copy this link for iOS, and in my device, I'll just go to Safari and I'll create a new tab and paste this link in here. and click go. This is going to take me to the dashboard of this specific build. As you can see here in my device, this is the internal distribution for iOS, and I can click on install. This is going to ask me this is going to tell me how to install on iOS 16 or higher. So let's go ahead and hit confirm. And now, because this is my device that I already registered, I can go ahead and install this build by saying installed. And this is going to install the application here. So let me bring this to the cleaner screen that I have here. And let's go ahead and open this app. By the way, I forgot. I think the server is not running on the left. Oh, it is asking me if I want to run this on the Android build on. I don't know if this is going to grab my Android that I have connected here, but let's just go ahead and say yes. Let's try it. Okay. But what I wanted to say is that we don't have the server running. So let's say npm start. This is going to start the server, and we should be able to see that this is a development build, as you can see here. So let me make this bigger because it's hard to see. Maybe make this a bit bigger and move this a bit here because my face is covering these two. Okay, cool. So now on the left, well, on the right, we have the development server running. That's one thing that we need to make sure we're doing. And then on the left is asking me if I want to install. It's asking me which device I want to install. Yeah, so I think I'll just go ahead and cancel this because I don't see my Pixel 8. So I'll just cancel this process, and yeah, let's come back to this in a moment. Let's put this to the left, and then let's go back to the iOS device. Now in this case, I don't see anything even though I have this app installed, right? So let's go ahead and log in into our account. That's why we don't see anything. So I'll say login. And then I'll select my account, Beto at Expo, and close. Now it's searching for development servers, but what I'll do is just close this and then go back to the app. And now I should be able to see the notifications server. I'll just go ahead and select this one, and now it's loading the bundle from here on my real device. And this is a development build, which means this is basically how the app is going to work in production. Okay, let me move this to the right. Now, as you can see, it's asking me if I want to allow this to send me push notifications. In the background, we don't see any push token yet for this device. So let's go ahead and select allow. Okay, once I allow, we can see the push notification that Expo gave us for this specific device. And I'll just press on continue here. This is the development client. Let's close this. And on the terminal, we have this in here. So let's go back to the tool. I'll just go ahead and replace this token. We are not going to be using it anymore. And yeah, so from here we can say title, my title, and then body, my body. And then we have the same data. Of course, this could be more complex, right? So for example, it could be ID, I don't know, message ID. Let's say that you are working on a message application, right? And you would have a bunch of numbers here. And then you could have something more, I don't know, like name or who sent this message, like sender. And then this would be something like Beto Modano. And that's it. Yeah. So that's the data, right? For iOS, we want a subtitle. So hello subtitle, and then batch count would be 1 because let's say that this is just a message. For Android, we can specify the channel ID. We can say default if we don't specify anything. And yeah, so let's go ahead and close the app so that we can see what's going on. And now I'll just trigger the notification. And if I wait a second. All right, and here we have the notification, just like that. We have the title, subtitle, and body. Cool, really cool, right? Now, let's see the console. This is our console. And as soon as I type on this notification, you can see that we did something, right? We basically tap on the notification, which means we triggered the notification response, which means the user interacted with the notification. So this event, it's going to come with the notification, as I was mentioning before, and also the date, and then the request, and all the information that comes with this push notification. Now, keep in mind that the notifications might look a bit different. I mean, the responses might look a bit different between iOS and Android, but it's going to be always the same. To access the data, in this case, the data, it's going to come inside the, so here we are logging the data actually. It's going to come inside the content, request content, and then we have this data. So this is the data that I sent. Now from here, of course, you could do something like, I don't know, fetch the message or fetch the conversation by message ID or something like that. And we're accessing this by in the index screen. This is coming from the context. So in this case, this is the response. This is what we're seeing in the console, but we are accessing as well the content.data, and this is what we're seeing at the very bottom here. By the way, I don't know if you guys are seeing. Let me make this a bit bigger. But yeah, this is basically how it looks. So it's working for iOS. Let's go ahead and test this on Android. So what I'll do for Android is just go to my Expo dashboard, and I'll scroll down and select notifications tutorial, which is the app that we're working on. And then we can select the Android, which is the second one, right? And as you can see, we have the date. This was like 20 minutes ago. So let's go ahead and select this one. And we can install this artifact. So this is an APK. Let's go ahead and hit install. And this is downloading. So let's see the details in here. Now I had the previous version, so let's go ahead and delete that one. We don't need it anymore. And then once this is done, I can just go ahead and press. Now, by the way, I have the debugging and developer mode already enabled in this device, so make sure that you already have that as well. And now it's asking me if I want to open. Of course I want to open, and this is installing it. So the app is installed. Let's go ahead and open. Now let's check the terminal, by the way, because this is going to give us the information that we need. Let me make this a bit bigger. I'll just go ahead and just close the other terminal. We don't need it anymore. And I'll just clean this terminal as well. Cool. Now the same thing. We are not seeing anything because we haven't logged in. So let's go ahead and log in. Select my account, Beto at Expo. Then close this. And then we should be able to, see this. Maybe I can, no, I cannot shake it. So let's go ahead and just close this and open again. Now that we are authenticated, we should be able to see the notifications tutorial. And now it's running the entry. So this should be quick enough, and we should be getting an alert asking us if we want to receive push notifications. Okay, and it's the first thing that we see. This is great. I'll go ahead and allow. And once I allow this, we should be able to get a push token. Yeah, there we have it. So that's the Expo token. So this is for Android. Let's go ahead and copy this. Let's go to the tool. In this case, we can leave the same stuff in here. I'll just change the, the push token for Android. And yeah, we can just go ahead and send the notification. Now, in this case, something very interesting, right? The app is running, as you can see here. And the behavior is a bit different because in this case, the app, it's showing the notification, right? So this is my title just now and my body, because we're seeing this because we set it in the layout, right? We said should show alert if the app is running. We say true, but that's why we're seeing it here in my device. And also in the index, remember that when we get a notification and the app is running, we are getting the data. So let me just close this. We're getting the data, and then we're putting here a text that is just printing the content.data. This is what we're seeing on the left. And yeah, so this is a notification. I'm accessing the data. From here, you can do whatever you need. And by the way, I'm accessing this data without typing the notification, right? So this is just one event, one listener. I was in the app, I got the notification, and I got the data. So you need to handle that according to your business logic. But if I go ahead and press on this notification, this will be a new event, as you can see over there. This is the same that we were testing on the iOS device, and here we have the same exact output. Although this is going to be a bit different for Android. As you can see, this comes with a bit more large body and more properties like sound tag. I don't think we have those on iOS. And then we also have this weird .data .body, which contains this like stringify body of the payload of the data that we sent. But we also have the content, right? Same as on iOS. And inside the content, we have the data very well formatted as we send it, and this looks very good, and this is how you can access the data for both platforms. Okay, so request content.data, it's going to be working for both platforms the exact same way. Cool. So I guess that's all I wanted to show you guys. It's a really quick video. I mean, it's not really quick video, but I would say once you have this set up, you should be ready to start integrating the business logic of your application and everything that you need. So that's it for this video. I hope you like it. I hope you learned something new. By the way, if you want to master React Native, go to codewithbeto.dev and check out the courses. Don't forget to subscribe, give it a like, and leave me a comment if you have any questions, and if you want to. And if you want me to create any specific video, just let me know in the comments as well. And if you have any questions about this topic, just let me know in the comments as well. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.